All right, I am going to give this another go. Hopefully everything is set up okay. All right, so I was having issues before with the upload speed and how I had the settings for OBS, but I think I got it figured out. So if you were watching, I apologize. I tried going through and editing it, and it was just terrible. So I figured I would give this another go. And real quick, I'm just going to test where I'm at right now. I tried going through and editing it, and it was just terrible. Okay, so everything still seems like it's good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and try this one more time. And let me take the sound off that. Okay, great. So now the next one that we're going to dissect. The first one we did was the robot from Anime Studio 10. I think they called it Render. Now we're doing the Space Woman here. And this is going to be done, or this was actually made in Anime Studio 11. So this is one of the newer characters. And then 12 obviously is the newest. So we'll get there. All right, awesome. So one of the things that we were doing before with dissecting was just breaking everything apart. And if you were in the last stream, one of the things that we did is, or the first thing that I did is I mentioned that there's 3 binding methods. There's flexi binding, point binding, and layer binding. And let's go ahead and first look for one of those binding methods to see if this is how it was bound, and that would be flexi binding. So I'm going to hit Control A on my keyboard. Oh, and what I did last time is I deleted the animation. So go ahead and do that. That helps to keep things kind of under control. So I'm just going to delete it from the document. And if you don't know where this is, or if you have Anime Studio 11 or Moho Pro 12, this is in the libraries folder, and it is under the factory content library, under characters, and then under Anime Studio Pro 11. This is known as Space Woman. And yeah. So let's see here. Let me check something out real quick. Okay. So these are all vector layers. So let's check out what is flexi bound. So I hit S on the keyboard, which is going to be bring up my bone strength. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that's flexi bound. And I can see that because of the bone strength around the bones. The bone strength might be a little bit hard to see in the stream, but it is the influence that is around the bones. Let me adjust my mic here. Okay. So all of this is flexi bound. It looks like the whole character. Actually, you know what? This is not right here. So my guess is this is what is going to be called the root bone. And if I am correct, that would mean that all of the children are pointing back to this main location. And it looks like they are. So this is the root bone. So your root bone is the one bone that doesn't need any bone strength or anything because of the IK chains, the inverse kinematic chains, they're all going to be linking back to that one central main bone that connects everything together. And that's known as your IK, or your root bone. So if I use my Manipulate Bones tool, I should be able to move this around, and I can. And if you are kind of new or not too familiar with Anime Studio or Moho, what we have down here that's preventing the legs from moving, this is the one thing that kind of breaks that IK chain, are what are called target bones. And these are your target bones right here. They are marked, you can't really see it too well, but they're marked with a target symbol, and that represents the target bone. And another thing about target bones is you also don't need any bone strength for target bones as well. So it looks like this whole character, let me highlight it one more time. Looks like this whole character has strength all over, besides the gun. That looks like it could be, You know what? Let's take a look here. The gun, I'm going to alt right click the hand. Okay, so the gun and the hand is all one layer. So that is also done with Flexi Binding as well. So this is actually a pretty easy rig to pull apart. But let's see if we're having any missing bones here. So I'm going to do show all bones. And it looks like that's all the bones. Okay. All right, yeah, so this one looks like a pretty easy one. So let's go ahead and start breaking this apart. And let's see how this bad boy, or girl in this case, was rigged. Okay, so let's start with the head. The head is flexi bound. And as you can see there, as I rotate her head backwards and forwards, those bones are staying straight. They're staying perpendicular to the ground. They're pointing straight towards the ground. And that might be right there. Let's go ahead and highlight one of them. If I go to my bone constraints and it's an independent angle checked, yes, it is. So that's an independent angle. That one is, that one is, that one is. That is not, obviously. So an independent angle allows you to, what's a good way to explain this? I don't know. As far as like the angle, so whenever you're rotating your bone, all of the children bone that are attached to that main parent bone, if they have an independent angle set, they're not going to rotate at all. So for example, let's take the first 3 hair bones right here and let's turn off the independent angle. So when I rotate this head bone, you can see those independent angles are still working as they should. They're pointing towards the ground. Those ones are not. They're going with the hair. So that's good to do with any type of clothing that might be hanging down, with hair, with anything you can think of that would be pulling against gravity, essentially, when you're rotating something around. So let's go ahead and let's turn those independent angles back on. So that's pretty easy. So flexi bound, awesome, independent angles. Let's see here. What is this? Let's see if I can rotate it on frame 1. Okay, so that is the reflection. So that's the animation bone for the reflection. And that, as you can see there, has no bone strength. So how do you think that one is bound? Well, let's take a look at it. I'm going to do an alt right click on the layer itself I want to check out. And there we go. There's my answer. It is bound by, let's see, where'd it go? Bright. Oh, that's weird. Oh, I'm on frame 1, so I want to make sure I'm on frame 0. Is it bones? Is it, what is that? That's interesting. Okay, let me kind of deselect the bone there. Okay, so that's something I'm not too familiar with. So I am trying to look at the bone color, and it is yellow. Okay, so this is bound by, you could either do it one of 2 ways. I'm guessing you could have done this with layer binding, but it looks like Victor, if he was the one that put this together, he did this with point binding. So whenever I rotate that bone, let's go back to frame 1. Whenever I rotate that bone with my manipulate bones tool, let's actually see if I can do that on frame 0. Cannot. Okay. So on frame 1, when I manipulate that bone, you can see that it is controlling the rotation. Okay. So now let's take a look at the head. So the head, we know, is connected all through here. So this bone connects all of these head layers. And as you can see, there is a lot. So one of the things that is obviously wise that most Anime Studio or Moho Pro users know, but if you do not, whenever you have a lot of assets like in this head, it is very wise to put all of those assets inside of a folder. And the reason being is because all of these assets, let's bring them all up here. Right. Okay. So all of these assets right here, besides this one, which is labeled bright, you know what? I clicked on the wrong thing. Head, helmet, hair, neck. There we go. There's the head. So you can see that there's a lot of assets. There's your hair, your nose, your eyes, your face, your head. And then outside of that folder, there's the neck. So what you can easily do is you can do this one of two ways. Because this looks like it's already using a Flexi Binding layer, you can simply select this layer, select the bone, and then you're going to hit Control-Shift-F, and then that's going to highlight that bone, letting me know that those layers have been Flexi bound. Another way you can do that, just as simple with a group layer, is you can bind with the layer binding method. So the bind layer icon, click on the head, same thing. And then obviously whenever you're binding layers, you don't need to have your bone strength on. So I can go back to my main bone layer, select my bone strength, and put that back at 0. But as you can see there, there's a lot of other stuff going on with the head. I haven't picked this apart yet, so let's go ahead and do that now. Let's take a look at the head. You have your hair top. Okay, so that's the hair front and the hair back. Hair top. Okay. Let's see here. Head. So inside of the hair, oh, that's the bottom of the hair. Face, eyes, nose, hair top, hair. Okay. I see. Okay. So the reason why in this case, Flexi Binding was done is you have your head layer and your hair layer outside of the group. So you have your head with the hair top inside of this group, and then you have the hair outside of it. And the reason why, because it's outside, is because if I put it in, watch what happens. It's in front of the neck. So now it looks like she has like a lion's mane or something. So in order to keep those separate, to keep the neck in front and to keep your layers in order, the neck and the head is separated. Again, with the hair though, you can, because this is again going to be attached to this layer here. I can easily take this this layer and I can bind it if I have the option here. There we go. So now when I manipulate this, all of it is moving. All of the whole layer is moving. But what the animator wanted to do is he wanted to have these bones down here take control of the hair down here. So when I rotate this head, now you're seeing all of the hair moving. Therefore, none of those bones with the independent angles are no longer doing their job. So this is a really good way to see how things work, because I actually forgot about that. So I would bring this back to a Control-Shift-F, which is going to allow me to, first I got to unbind it. So there's one of two ways to unbind your layers. You can either select the icon and then click off, or in this case, with it still selected, I can go to bone and then release layer. And so that's going to release that layer down there. So now with that hair layer selected, I'm going to do Control-Shift-F. Actually, I'm going to make sure first that I have my bone strength in there. And then I'm going to go to the hair, do Control-Shift-F. And there we go. So that's kind of where it was before, because I kind of messed with it a little bit, but that just lets you see how that is being done. Another cool thing that I noticed is when the head rotates, the head itself is actually inside of a mask. To be able to stay inside of this orb and not pop out of it, it needs to be inside of a mask. So right here we have glass, and then we have the head. Oh, so that's part of the head. And then the helmet. Let's see what the helmet is. Okay, so the helmet is the whole entire, what on earth? Okay, so that's tricky. So the helmet is the whole entire thing. Let's see how this was made. So this is getting into masking, and this can sometimes be confusing, but let's take a look at it here. So I double click the layer that was masked, which is this layer here. So this contains everything, the neck, everything that you see that just disappeared. You double click it, go to my masking, and okay, so that's set at hide all. And then inside of the head, let's see. So the head itself is then set at no masking in this group. So the head itself, oh, that's weird. Okay, so no masking. Let's see what happens when I do hide all. Okay. So no masking in this group. Let me see what that does real quick. Okay, I see. All right. So this head layer is not going to be masked at all, but it is inside, technically it's inside of a mask of hide all already. So what the animator did is simply selected this particular group to not mask, because you can see what it does. What it wants to do is it wants to mask all of the layers inside of here. I keep on getting confused what is inside of there. So that ends in hair. So all of this right here. So when I wanted to hide all of those, you can see the outcome. So I'm not going to mask that group. And then down here, it looks like this layer, the hair layer, the bottom layer, that will be masked. And as you can see there, you can see where that mask is happening. So it's not happening. That hair is not going outside, because watch what happens when I don't mask this layer. It's going to go outside of the helmet there. So I want to have that not add to mask this layer. And then when you're looking at your, let's see here, the helmet. Okay, this part throws me through a loop. What the heck is the helmet? Oh, okay. So it's a shape. So the shape has a fill, and that's what makes up the helmet. Okay, that makes sense. So this would be add to mask. So there we go. That makes sense. All right, so if you haven't seen, because you're probably looking at this through my channel or through watch me work, if you haven't seen my masking tutorial, that will explain how this mask works, because that's kind of a whole other elephant to bite. I don't know. That's another big thing to focus on there. All right, so that's the head. So we pretty much got how you pretty much know how the head is rigged. So awesome. Let's move on to the next thing. So we have the chest. That looks pretty simple. It looks like the chest, because this is your root bone, it looks like the chest rotation. You can see the bone, the rotation is happening right there. And obviously this is going to take some smart bones. I imagine they're smart bones. Let me click this chest layer, which is B3, and I'm going to hit Control K on my keyboard. And let's see if there's any smart bones for it. B7. Oh, wow. Okay, awesome. All right, so that doesn't have any. Let's see what body is real quick. Oh, so that's the rotation. All right, so cool. So the designer is actually using just Flexi Binding to do this bend. Obviously, I mentioned it in the last stream, so if you didn't see it, but obviously this character isn't meant to bend down very far. If not, or if so, then they would make accommodations for it so that it can actually bend that far using smart bones or what have you. But I deleted the animation. But basically all it was just the character walking across the screen and then flipping to the side and shooting something. So with this simple rig, it's able to do that. if I wanted to have it do a body bend, I could focus more on this bending area down here with smart bones. But because this particular character, and with all your characters, what they should be is you should have a character rigged for a specific animation you want it to accomplish. And all of that needs to be done in your pre-production, which is your designing stage. So I'm pretty sure this had to go through some designing stage when it was being done on paper and pencil or through some drawing program, while the designer was trying to figure out how this could be simplified in order to animate. Same thing with the storyboard. When you're doing your storyboard and you're going over your poses and you're going over all the key things that are going to be occurring in your different shots, that is the other thing as well, is they need to take into consideration, okay, what kind of rigs do I need to build for each one of these shots? How many of the same rig could I use for these different shots? So, or different actions or poses or what have you. So in this case, because it's a simple walk, it works exactly as it should. It doesn't take any more than a simple flexi binding bone to move that around. Again, with your flexi binding, you can adjust your bone strength. So if I wanted to, I could say, I don't like the way that that's bending right there. So I can go ahead and add some more bone strength there. And that's where the tweaking comes in, because look what happens when I added all of that bone strength. It basically takes that character, I'm messing with the wrong thing. So this bone right here. So when I added all that bone strength, it basically took that character and put it back in its original form, because now it's overpowering any of the other strength that's happening in the body. So whenever I take this down and I dial this down, oh, that's interesting. There we go. Okay, that was weird. So when I took that and I dialed that down, oh, you know what? There was, okay, so I was mistaken. So in this root bone right here, wait, is that the root bone? Let's take a look here. Yeah, that is the root bone. So in that root bone, there actually was a little bit of bone strength, and there had to be in order to be able to do this bend. So in typical cases, you actually don't, because everything connects back together, and root bones usually are like this. So usually you'll see character animations or character rigs, either mine or anybody else's, that has like a bone going out like that. That's typically your root bone, and your root bone usually has 0 bone strength. But because this root bone is actually part of the character itself, and because of this bend not being possible without adding bone strength to this actual root bone, because that was the next thing I was going to figure out is, okay, if that was bending without, and this didn't have strength, these points had to have been bound by some other bone. But this actually had strength in itself. So let's bring it to where it was originally. So somewhere around there. Yeah. And check that out. All of those assets are moving simply by that influence. So a lot of times you can actually get away by doing things in a lot more simpler form by simply adding bone strength and doing flexi binding. A lot of people think you need to do point binding for all of this, and no, you really don't. You can get away with quite a lot, especially with this character, by simply adding your bone strength. So that's pretty cool. Let's see, what was the next thing? So we already know that is all flexi bound. I know that these arms themselves are flexi bound, but if you can see here, there's also a bone right here. Let's see what that does exactly. All right, so that's for the shoulders. But basically what this is doing, you know what? Let's see if this is because there's maybe like a body turn or something. Nope. That's interesting. So, okay, so you got the blink and you got the body turn. Okay, so if that is not used for anything, my guess is these bones right here, let me take a look at the parenting. Yeah, so these bones, you can see, are completely disconnected. Not completely disconnected. This bone right here is considered the root bone. So this is going to be the root bone of the arm. And I've actually seen this method quite a bit with Victor's rigs, and it's pretty impressive. I just ran across it in the last stream that I was doing. And it's something I'm not really familiar with. I'm not familiar with doing it this way. So basically what's going on is you have your root bone, which is going to be connected back to the arm bone, as you can see there. So what that looks like it's allowing me to do, because both of those have bone strength, is to rotate not only the shape, not only the letter on the arm, but the shape of the shoulder. And my guess is depending on where this bone is, oops, I don't know if I can move this. Depending on where those two bones are located from one another will depend on how that rotation is going to be affected, as you can see there. So if I bring it over here, that's going to affect the rotation over there on that side of the arm. So that just kind of lets you round off the shoulder movement, so to say, is what that looks like it's being used for. Again, I didn't create this character. That's my guess. And the other reason I say that is because this has bone strength. If this didn't have bone strength, that shouldn't be rotating. Yeah. So because it had bone strength, it was able to rotate a lot more than just the details inside of the shoulder. Because when I remove the bone strength, you can see it's just going to move those details around. But when I added bone strength, it's actually going to move not only just the details, but everything, including the shoulder. Oops. So let's go ahead and rotate that. And there you go. You can see how that works. So that's pretty cool. I wouldn't really do that in what I would consider for rigging, but that's a pretty cool method. Let's go back to the parenting. Let's see how everything else is set up. So everything else is pretty simple. So you have your hand that connects back to your forearm, that connects back to the bicep, that connects back to the chest. So that's typically how you would do it. So that's cool. So the same thing is going on the other side. You have your two bones with the bone strength, so that they're kind of like a, I don't know, like a opposite polarization or something with like magnets. So they're not going to, what's the word to say it? They're not going to cross each other. They're going to push away from each other. So when this parent and this child relationship is being rotated, one is moving away from the other, because I would imagine with this one, oh, there's 0 bone strength on that one. Okay. So what is causing it to move upwards? So one of the next things that I would do, oh, I just saw the neck. There's something funky going on there. Let's fix the head, the neck. Oh, that's weird. I'm trying to remember what the original drawing looks like now. No, mask this layer. Don't mask this layer. I think that was don't mask this layer. So that's the helmet. So the hair and the neck. There we go. Maybe? No. Oh, that's interesting. I'm trying to remember. Let me pull up another character of these just to see what it looks like. Can't remember what that's supposed to look like. Space Woman. No, I can't. Import by reference. Oh, I gotta select it. There we go. All right, so I got another Space Woman now pulled up here so I can see what the heck this was supposed to look like. Oh. Okay, that's weird. So it actually, that's weird. Okay, so I don't know if that's a design flaw or if that was intentional, but yeah, so that neck piece, for whatever reason, is going to be popping out. So that's going to have absolutely no masking. Okay. That's fine. I guess that works. It just kind of looks like the neck's separated. I don't know. If it was me in this case, I would actually have the neck behind the body, not on top of it, because that's something I didn't even notice. Okay, so let's see here. So we got the arms. Okay, so I was focusing on this side of the arm before I got distracted there by the neck. So this bone doesn't have any bone strength. So the next thing that we can discover in our dissection is how is this moving? Let's see. So check their parent to child relationship. Let me, oops, select that. Take the parenting off. Whoa, there's some crazy results, huh? What kind of binding does this have? I have no idea what this is. I don't know what this bone is. Let's see. What is this thing? A ball. That's interesting. So this is a ball. What the heck? I have no idea how that is bound or why it's moving. It's not even bound to anything, I don't think. That's really weird. Can't move it on frame 1 at least. Whoa. I have no idea what that is. I can't move it. I can't do anything with it. Does it have any sort of bone constraints? Oh, it's an angle control bone. What the heck? Is that how that's working? Duh. Okay. All right. I was wondering why that wasn't making sense. So that is an angle control bone. And if you haven't learned what an angle control bone is, that's actually something that doesn't get covered a lot, but I covered it in my course, or I have covered it in my course. Because they're pretty nifty. So in this case, as you can see, as I'm rotating this way, so let me do something real quick here first. So I'm going to select this bone. So the angle control bone is B16 at -1. So I'm going to move this to +1 just to change the value and see what that does. Yep. Okay. All right. So let me go back to the bone here. Let's make the -1. All right. So what a control bone does, let's see if I can find a way to explain this. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But basically, so right here, this should be a control bone as well. Yes. So this control bone should be labeled B6. It says B6. Let's see if this is B6. It is B6. Okay. So the best way is to show you. This is actually something that's kind of hard for me to explain, to be quite honest. So when I make a bone, I'm not going to have it parent to anything, and I'm going to make what's called a control bone. And this control bone is going, let's see what I'd name this, B1. So this control bone is going to control, I'm going to have it control the angle, the position, and the scale. And as we can see here from the example, whenever I rotated the arm of the Space Woman, it rotated the shoulder. So that basically, I don't know, saves you from having to animate or do smart bones or whatever for this particular example. But in here, I will show you with the 2 bones we got here. I'll take I think I can take the strength off. So I'll take the strength off and I'll go to frame 1. So when I rotate this bone, oh wait, let's see, strength. I probably need strength because yeah, it's not gonna move. Okay, am I on the right layer? I guess that would help if you're on the right layer. Yeah, I wasn't even on the right layer. Wait, I was. What the heck? That's weird. Okay, oh, I'm on, okay, so let's bring some strength back. All right, so there we go. So a control bone is basically going to do exactly that. It's going to be used as a controller or control another bone or connect multiple bones to it. So for example, with my bone constraints, I have my angle control. So whenever I rotate bone B2, it's going to rotate bone B1 at a value of 1 or the exact same value. So watch, when I rotate, dang it, when I rotate this bone, Jiminy Christmas, I'm trying to figure out, why isn't this? Maybe I have to be on frame 1. What the heck is this doing? Okay. Come on, baby, work with me. What is this doing? Oh, duh. Okay. So B1, I had those backwards. Okay, so I set my control bone. My controlled bone is B1, but my control bone is, my controlled bone is B2. My control bone is B1. So whenever I rotate B1, it's going to rotate B2, as you can see there. Whenever I stretch, I have to be on frame 1 for this, good grief. Whenever I stretch and squash B1, it's going to squash and stretch B2. And because, like I said, they're going to be at the exact same value, which I assign here to this bone, I can change that up. I can do that at 2. The position control, this is representing your X and Y. I don't know in which order it goes. I just trial and error it. So C, so I'll do 2 and 3. And then your scale bones, I'll put that at 2. So this is going to be pretty drastic differences. But whenever I move the position of this bone, let's see what. Yeah, so that first value that I put in for the position, that's going to be your X. Because you can see I set it at 2, so it's less of a movement versus Y. Watch what happens when I go to Y. Zoom this out a little bit. You can see it's not only doubling, it's tripling that value because I set it to a value of 3. Likewise, when I do the rotation, when I rotate, let's try that again. When I rotate that back and forth, I now doubled that value. So any movement here is doubled here. So when I move it straight perpendicular down that way or this way, you can see it's almost doubled that value. Now, you would probably think, okay, this is odd. Why in the world would you use control bones? Well, because you don't need to have just one bone that's being controlled. You can have multiple bones. So in this case, let's see if I can think of an example. This would help with some kind of something. Here, let me make a ball real quick. Oops. So I'm going to create a ball. Oh, I got to create a vector layer. Bring that down to layer 5. I'm going to call this ball. And that's a square. And we'll make it red. Okay. So I'm going to put my main bone. Let's see here. What bone is it going to be? Let me try this again. So I'm going to delete this and I got to be on my ball layer. So I'm going to delete this and I'm going to delete this. So inside of this main bone, I'm going to make a bone here and a bone here. And those bones will have their strength. So they'll be able to move backwards and forwards, and they should, let's bring it to frame 1, should be able to do like a squash and stretch. Okay, cool, it does. All right, so what I can do now is I can create a control, this would be my controller bone, this would be my controlled bone. So I can make a controlled bone now, and I will just go ahead and I will label this so I don't keep confusing myself. Squash and stretch. So now I have a bone that's labeled squash and stretch. That's going to control the squashing and stretching of this bone right here. So what I'm going to do, let's see, I'm trying to remember. It's kind of confusing. You got to remember which bone you're going to be controlling. So position. Okay, so it's going to be these two. So I have B1 and I have B2. So let's see. So my scale is what I want to control, and I'll have that as my squash and stretch. And that'll be set to a value of 1. And then I'll have my scale, which will also be set to squash and stretch. So this can now let me go to frame 1. Now let me control the squashing and stretching of not just one bone, but 2 bones with one controlled bone. And again, you can change the value of those. But that gets into pretty advanced rigging, and something I've never really used control bones before, simply because there've never been a really good explanation of it, and a lot of it was just trial and error to figure out how it works. But like in this example with the shoulder blades or the shoulder pads, something I would have never have thought of. That works. That works really well for the control bones. So that was quite a lot to explain what control bones are, but I hope that made sense. Hey Mike, I hope I didn't miss your comment before. I just saw that just now. But how's it going, man? Thanks for watching. We are dissecting a rig, and it's a lot of fun. Kind of a lot to go over, but let's keep on going. All right, so the next part now. So the arms are the same. So we know everything is flexi bound. That's flexi bound. That's flexi bound. The legs are most likely flexi bound. They are. There's bone strength in all of those. There's a little itty bitty foot right there that we can rotate on frame 1. That is most likely flexi bound. Let's see. It is. So overall, it's a really simple rig. This is something you can put together. Just the bone structure here. This is something you can put together in less than 20 minutes. It wouldn't take that long at all because it's so simple. So what I think you should do is take these rigs apart, like pull them apart, dissect them, figure out how they work, and then put them back together again. But when I say put them back together again, delete all of the bones. Let's see. Okay, so there is a question of how to do that without basically disconnecting the registering of the bone to the vector in Moho. Or in Anime Cedo, there's kind of an issue. But I think the thing that solves it is this. So you do Control A to select all of your bones, and you're going to go reset all bone rigging. So now when I go through my bones, yeah, see, it kind of works. It kind of doesn't. I think you kind of got to help it along. It looks like for some reason it's grabbing her foot there, which is kind of weird. Let's see here. So I'll show you what I'm trying to say right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of these bones because now we got a pretty good idea. The rest of it was, actually I'll just make a new file real quick here. And I will save that. Or I don't even need to save it. So I'll just make a new file. So I'll have one with bones and I'll have one without. So I'm going to delete all of these bones now. Okay, so now when I go in and I want to rig this, you might get a little bit of a funky result. Let's see if I get it. So I want to rig the hand or the arm. So I'm going to kind of copy what the original designer did, and I'll make a little root bone, but it's not connected to anything. Let's see, let me double check something real quick, because now I just confused myself. So it's the arm. Okay, so the arm goes directly to the chest. So in this case, I will create a root bone because I don't have a chest layer or chest bone set up yet. So I'll kind of fudge it a little bit. So I'll have my arm. That goes probably about to there. Have my hand that goes about there, and my forearm to my hand. Now, when I have my bone strength, I'm going to reduce that down to really small increments there, so it's not too controlled. And what I'm going to do, because it's going to want to control the whole entire body, because I only have the bone strength set up on the arm, is I'm just going to isolate the arm itself. There was a way I could do this before. What the heck happened? There was a way you could just isolate the one layer. I don't know what happened to it, but it was Alt. You Alt and then you click. I don't know what happened to it. If anybody that's watching knows, that would help out a lot. But until then, I'll just go through and just... Oh, I think they probably changed it because now you can just drag through it, maybe? I don't know. But that's different. Okay, so you can drag through and you can take your visibility and focus on the one layer. So in this case, I'm focusing on this one layer. And so far, everything looks pretty good. Okay, so that's wonky. And the reason why that's wonky, let's go ahead and adjust the... Okay. Because it's not an entire piece of artwork. So let's go back to this hand example and let's see how this was rigged. So my first guess is this is probably a layer binding, which I thought it was. But when I right clicked it, oh, it was point binding, not layer binding. Okay, so for this bone, because I'm using point binding, I actually don't need any bone strength here. If I can delete it. What the heck? There we go. Okay, this is being really weird. It's because I'm not on my layer. All right, let's take a look here. Yeah, I don't think there's any bone strength on this bone here. There is not. Yep, that shows me 0. So this was done with point binding. So I'll select all of those points, go to my point binding, and you're gonna see something cool that's been changed is now, let's make sure I have my bone selected. So I have my bone selected, I'm gonna go to point binding. This automatically gives me bone colors. For what I can tell right now. I don't know if these were already set, but this has a purple bone. So when I bind my points, oops, let's highlight them. When I bind my points, all those points now should be purple. When I go to my bone binding, those look blue, but those should be purple. So it should work like that. Yes. And let's see. Okay, so it looks like I bound too many points there. So these points right here on the arm, on the underside, you can see when I rotated the arm backwards and forwards, that piece was showing. And what I want to do is I want to deselect those from that bone. So what I'm just going to do is just going to select them again and then do, let's see, where is my... Is it? I can't remember if it's enter or space anymore. Okay. Okay, so I kind of got what I was looking for there. Not really. Let's try that again. It's confusing when each software release is a little bit different. So now I'm going to deselect those points. To deselect those points, I'm going to hit G on the keyboard. Come on. To do my deselecting point, hold Alt and then click the points that I want to deselect. Then I'm going to go back. Oh, shoot. Bring those back. And that was weird. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. And now what I want to do is I want to go to my point binding and now bind those points. And now those other points should not be binded. Oh, brother. Why is it doing that? So again, a lot of it's trial and error. And a lot of it is change of keyboard shortcuts, which is kind of driving me crazy. So I got to see what this... I don't even know what this hand looks like or what it's supposed to look like. So the hand... Ball... Let's see. Hand... where's the bloody arm? What the heck? Hand, arm. There we go. Is that the arm? What is this called? So I'm going to alt right click. Oh, it's my glove. Good grief. Okay, so that's my glove. Have no idea why that's a glove. That should be a forearm or something. Okay, so that's why I was getting that wrong. Okay, that makes sense. So what I want to do is I want to bind those points then to the other bone. So I'm going to bind those points to this bone. And that should now give me the result that I'm looking for. So now when I move that arm, I move that backwards and forwards. I don't know if that have, what do you call it, smart bones? B19. I didn't have any smart bones. Okay, so I did something wrong with my binding. Simply because I'm trying to figure out on the fly of what. Oh, you know what? Okay. It's where my bone was placed. That's why. So check out where my rotation is. And this is why it's getting screwed up. Now watch what happens when I take that same bone and I just move it up. Let's go back to my main layer there. So I'm just going to rotate that upwards. There we go. See the difference? And that's just stuff that you have to play with. And you don't want to rely too much on smart bones to fix those mistakes for you, because those could be fixed just like simply rotating a bone to a different location. So it's mostly where I'm placing the rotation point right now that's going to determine how this bone is going to work. And you know what? I might be just doing an extreme turn. Yeah. So I got it down. Okay. And that's basically that. And then if you wanted to, for, I don't know, for aesthetics, you can connect those bones together to make them look nice or whatever. But really where these bones end, that's the thing. Where these bones end, it doesn't really matter, to be quite honest. It's actually going to be where the bones begin. So your rotation point is going to be right there. So that's what's going to make the difference. So there we go. Just like that, in what should have been like a minute, we were able to rig the arm just like it originally was, except this part up here. As you can see, there's a little bit of a funky movement. Take the bone strength off. Oh, that was the one with the control bone. Okay, that's totally fine. And then you do the same for the arm. So typically, it's not doing it right now, but when it's not registering properly, like you connect the bone and the flexi bones, the flexi bone and the bone strength is not working, what you want to do is this. You want to right-click the layer that's giving you issues, which in this case there are many. So like this one, I would select the arm because this is just one layer, and then you have your highlight and your shadow or whatever. You're going to click the folder, go to the bone, and then you'll usually have some sort of check mark showing that the how the bone is bound. It'll have like a check mark. I think it's on the, let's see what side it's on. Let's see here. Flexi binding. Reset. Oh, you know what? That's when you uncheck it. So when you want to get your bone strength back, you're going to go here and you're going to release your layer if it was a layer, or you're going to release your, if it was a bind layer. So it goes like this. So this is your layer binding, your flexi binding, and then layers and points is typically what I select because it deselects both of those. So I just do that for safekeeping. So layers and points. So now, oh, that's weird. Let's try that again. So this bone, did I select the right bone? Oh, no, I didn't. So this bone right here, if I selected the right bone in the first place, and I go to my bone, reset layers and points, what the heck? It should disconnect from this layer. And this is kind of where things get a little bit buggy, to be honest with you. Reset all bone rigging. That's weird. Because this arm right here is being controlled by flexi binding. Or just, not even by flexi binding. What is this being controlled by? What the heck? I didn't even bind these to anything. How is this being controlled? What on earth? Okay. Let's try something real quick. Let's select all of these bones. Reset all bones. That's really weird. Reset bones, reset all bones, reset all bone rigging. Okay, so that's flexi binding. If I take the bone strength off, it's gone. Let me create these bones again real quick here. Okay, so I'm going to create my root bone. I'm going to create my arm bone, create my forearm, and then my hand. Now, it's already giving me the option to, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. So this should be with non-flexi binding. Okay, and it looks like it is. So I remember only rigging the hand. All of this should not be, that looks better. Wow, so either I put that together really well or something was a little wonky there. And what I mean by that is the, oh dang it. Where's the arm? The hand, and what was it called? The ball? No. Body. I'm trying to look for that upper portion that I just took out. Ball. I don't know if it's the ball because it's not showing. Head, arm. There we go. That's fine. Okay, so this, let me remove everything else that shouldn't be there. So this right here is your default rigging. So this is correct. This is giving me the correct results. Because what it doesn't have right now is flexi binding. As you can see, the gun is bending. If this was flexi bound, everything would be moving as it should. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit, I'm going to alt right click just to quick bring me to that layer. And I can see that's the arm. And so now I'm going to select the arm. With that bone, I'm going to hit Control Shift F, and that's going to give me that option. That's a really bad place to place your rotation point, to place your bone. But I'm just showing you quickly what this is doing. So I'm going to go now to my glove. This is my glove, and I'm going to do Control Shift F, and then I'm going to go to my hand, which is all just one big layer, and I'm going to do Control Shift F. Okay, so now that should, let's see. This is still giving me a weird result, and that could be because of my bone strength. So let me dial that down a little bit. So the really cool thing is you can tweak these things. So right here, you can tweak this, and then on the fly, you can adjust your bone strength to see where that needs to be adjusted. So whenever you see any sort of deformations or anything just weird, that's when you can adjust those things. Okay, so that's working as it should. So basically, I'll be wrapping up here because I wanted to keep this to an hour. So basically what I showed you with everything so far, I showed a lot more with the previous streams that I was doing, but is to how to pick apart your a rig that you're not familiar with at all, a rig that you haven't created. I haven't created this. I got a little bit lost in the naming convention here, but you can quickly find out how someone else had rigged a character. So really quick, we were able to find that this was mainly flexi bound. This was all flexi binding. It had bone strength. There was control bones. Obviously, you have your, if I hit Control K, you have your smart bones. Obviously, for blink, that's going to be point animation. B7, that's the movement of the arm. So that little distortion and that warping that we were having issues with, let me go back to my main line here. I'm going to click the main bone, and then I'm going to go to that bone. What was it again? B7. So when I click on that bone, let's see here. So it looks like Victor has it at 120 frames. Yep. So when I go through the smart bone, check that out. So it looks like he's got some point animation in there along with your layer rotation. So just like that, he was able to do the arm. If I alt right click, I'm going to bring that into the glove layer, which is this layer right here. This isn't the highlights or anything. All of these things are going to be, maybe these were adjusted by hand. I'm not sure. But it looks like all this was layer rotation. So all very simple layer rotation. The only thing that's changing is right here is the little, the cuff part of the arm. So as you can see there, that's bending a little bit, and that's using some point animation is what he looks like he's got there. Oops. So let's go back to my main line. And that's really it. And then again, with the chest, if I go to Control K and I go to my body, all of this right here is going to be point animation. Because there's no other bones or anything that's going to be translating around. You can see simply by this movement that it's all point animation. If I click on this little Iron Man sphere thing right there in the middle and I drag that across, you can see that that is all point animation. So again, when it comes to head turns, when it comes to body turns, when it comes to any of those things, these are things that are already planned. I'm pretty sure Victor, well, maybe because he's got the skill, but I'm pretty sure that most animators have these already in different poses. So that body turn was already pre-planned on a piece of paper and pencil, a piece of paper or whatever software. So right here, you can get an idea. Actually, that's pretty easy. So that's an easy turn. But with a lot more of the more extreme turns and the more extreme angles that you want to get into, it's best to plan those things on paper or in your favorite animation or drawing program, because that way it will give you a better reference. You'll have a reference when you want to do your body turns. You can simply just export or import the image into Anime Studio and just kind of trace, just bring those points over to those tracing points of where you want them to be. Same thing with like a full body turn. If I wanted to, what I could do is I could do Control R, and this is something I've done for pretty big body turns. Oop, let's fix my project. Let's just delete this. Don't save. So what I could do, oh dang it, this is my weird one. But basically what I would do is I can do Control R on my keyboard, and then you can save your image as a PNG. And then say I already have this character, if I can select it, say I already have this character flipped on this side. I can import a PNG to have a mirrored image of the character. And then what I can do is I can move all of those points. I can have that say this was like an image layer. Let me just duplicate this real quick. Show you what I'm trying to say. So what I could do is I could have this one that I'm going to make slightly opaque. So if this was an image layer, I could have this as my main vector, and then I can do my point animation, match it up with this image layer. I can match up the shoulders. I can match up all those things. So it's kind of has like a symmetrical body turn. And then the middle portion would actually be almost tweened. You'll have to adjust it maybe a little bit, but if you have all of your keyframe interpolation on linear and you're letting through SmartBones Anime Studio or Moho do the in-between for you, it's going to help you get that front-facing turn. So that's why whenever you see a lot of Victor's characters or something like that, they're already at 3/4 turns, because not only does it look better and it's easier to rig and it's easier to animate rather than a profile, it's also easier to smart bone as well whenever you're doing head turns or things like that. So again, that's how I would do it. I would create a reference image underneath of my character, so that when I do want to do a head turn or something like that, I can, if they're symmetrical on both sides, I can simply just drag the points over to the other side, and it just gives you a really good point of reference is what it does. So thanks for everyone who's been watching as well. Yeah, I already did this today for about an hour and a half, and it didn't go well with my upload speed and stuff, but I got that all fixed. If you're watching this now, I appreciate you checking this out, and it looks like Colonel Phil and Mike, you commented, and I appreciate you joining in and everything. But this is just a really good practice. It really is. I learned a lot from this rig. I learned a lot from the other rig that Victor created. I had no idea that you can use control bones like that, so I thought that was really cool. But this is just to show you something that you can do if you have free time, or if you're wanting to learn more about rigs and how they're made. I said this in the last stream, but a lot of times what people do that I see is they ask for rigs. They'll ask for the rig. They're like, "Oh, that's so cool. Can I have that rig? Can I download it? Can you share it with me?" or whatever. And typically these are people that want it, and in my case, they want it and they want to use it in their own animations, and usually 9 times out of 10, they're not going to give you credit for your own animation. They're going to say it's theirs. I've had that a lot of times. But also they just want to use it, or they just get it and they don't do anything with it. They don't study it. They don't, I guess in this case, we're calling it dissect it. So if you're one of those people, and if you struggle with that, I hope this helps, because this is something that I do. I used to do a lot more frequently when I was learning how things worked and things like that. But as I was able to come up with my own methods, and as I was able to come up with my own rigging techniques, I found a pretty good way to streamline my process, especially because I've done a lot of client videos that are like explainer videos that use a lot more of like switch layers and really quick animations, because it's a really quick turnaround time. So I hope this helps. I appreciate everyone that's watching this, and I hope this helps all of you. But other than that, if you guys don't have any questions, I do appreciate everyone watching this stream. I hope you find this useful in some way. Definitely leave comments if you're watching this later than October 26th. Definitely leave comments. Let me know what you think. Ask questions. I made this YouTube channel to talk with people and to in the Facebook groups to create a community, and that's what I want. I love to help people. I like to answer questions, clear any doubts or any things that you might have, because this is again what I like to do. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys later.